Hi guys, how you all doing? It never rains, but it pours here at St James's Park, and that has been the situation today in one of the biggest, most convoluted stories I've been involved in my almost 12 years of covering this football club. As you can see, here I am, St James's Park today, absolutely chucking it down. I think is reflective of what's going on at the moment. If you're new to the channel, please do subscribe. If there's more of this sort of thing you want, please like. It's probably not what you want to hear, but I'll bring you the news as we have it. And if you are keen to get involved in the debate, I'm sure you are. It'll be difficult to read these comments, but leave your comments below. In the meantime, I'll get into the video. Right, what a story this is. Started today thinking that Newcastle were on the verge of bringing in Hugo EKITIKE to join Alexander Issac in their striking ranks. In fact, all I could see in social media was people laying out the formation with EKITIKE and Issac up front and Elanga on one wing and Gordon on the other, and Bruno as the holding midfielder alongside Tonali. And here we are. What time is it? 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's all been made clear exactly what's been going on regarding this situation. So I'll try and cut through the noise, but basically Liverpool have not so much made an approach, but they've kind of, there's been some contact with Newcastle. It's not official, but there's been some contact just to see about the availability of Alexander Issac. One more time, we know that Liverpool like Alexander Issac, we know that Arsenal like Alexander Issac. It's no surprise that Liverpool have made a bit of an attempt. People have been saying for weeks and months now how Liverpool want Alexander Issac and they will get their man. And Newcastle, the noises from Newcastle all along has been that Alexander Issac will remain on Tyneside as a Newcastle United player. They want him to sign a new contract and they think he'll stay, and they want him to stay, and they want him to score loads of goals in the Champions League next season. And no matter of money, unless it was an absolutely ridiculous £150 million plus bid, would see Alexander Issac leave this club. So Liverpool have been told today that Alexander Issac is not for sale this transfer window and he will remain a Newcastle United player. So that's the good news for you guys, right? But as a result of that, what it means is Liverpool will now turn their attentions to Hugo EKITIKE, who of course, as we have been saying for the last 24 hours, is a player Newcastle were keen to sign. A player Newcastle have liked for 3.5 years. Let me just clear that off my screen. A player that Newcastle have tried to buy this morning. Newcastle have made this morning a club record £70 million bid to Eintracht Frankfurt for the forward. Frankfurt are looking for £85 million. Newcastle have offered 70. There's a gap in the valuation there. The noise is coming from my Sky Germany colleague over in Frankfurt, Florian Plettenberg, was that Frankfurt are looking for €100 million. That's £85 million, and they felt that there's other clubs at the table looking at Hugo EKITIKE. It's now emerged that one of those clubs, no surprise, is Liverpool. Look, there's not many strikers available in the market, especially at that level. So few players can play that position so well and with the poise and the excellence and the goal scoring the likes of Issac and EKITIKE can. If you look at the goals across Europe last season, you can see exactly why they're in demand. So because Liverpool have been told they can't have Issac, they are now turning their attentions to Hugo EKITIKE. Now Newcastle's interest remains. They made that club record £70 million bid for EKITIKE this morning, which was turned down. But as a result of that, Newcastle now know that they face competition from Liverpool for EKITIKE. And I was asked the question in a live earlier. It'll be fascinating to see how this plays out. Who do you think is going to make the biggest bid? Look, we don't know the answer to this, but I have to say it's going to be a bit more difficult for Newcastle now, knowing that Liverpool are one of the clubs at the table. They've got money to spend. Yes, they've broken their record to sign Florian Wirtz already this summer, but the fact they're interested in Issac at over £100 million, £120 million, shows that they can afford the 85 for EKITIKE if they want him. And Newcastle have got a limited budget. You know, they offered 70 million. I thought that was a fair offer, a good offer for a player who signed for Frankfurt for £60 million last summer for PSG, a £56 million profit Frankfurt would be making It would be great business for them, but they know that they can get more money. They know that Liverpool are sniffing around, and Liverpool now are set to come to the table and rival Newcastle for EKITIKE. So, as I said in a live earlier, Newcastle United, the only club who this time yesterday could have had both of the strikers, and then within 24 hours could have had none of them. But look, I think it's all kind of, I've worked it all out now. It becomes clear what's happened. The Liverpool were interested in both strikers. They would have preferred Issac. Newcastle would have preferred Issac. Newcastle are holding the cards with regards to that. Newcastle say ISAK stays, so Liverpool then turn their attention to EKITIKE. And while Newcastle would have loved to have both of those strikers, it looks as though it's going to be difficult to have both unless they somehow come out with a huge bid that Liverpool can't match and the player decides he wants to come here. But you would suggest that even if Newcastle offer the £85 million that EKITIKE that Frankfurt want for EKITIKE, he would then have a choice to make if Liverpool offer it as well. And yeah, I would be surprised if he chose Newcastle over Liverpool, given Liverpool the Premier League champions, etc, etc. So look, not the story you guys wanted to hear. You wanted to hear me saying today that EKITIKE had been agreed, and I think probably Newcastle felt this morning if they get the offer in early and it's accepted, you know, they might get the deal done. But Frankfurt will be well aware there's other clubs at the table, one of them being Liverpool. And Liverpool, while they might not have been at the table this morning when they were still hoping for Issac, they'll certainly be at the table now, and it's going to be difficult for Newcastle. So it feels very much like another one that might have slipped by for Newcastle. Obviously missed out on Liam Delap, missed out on João Pedro, both to Chelsea. Looks like they've missed out on Brian Mbeumo, who, I mean, has he gone to Man United? I don't know. Is he? I mean, it's dragged on forever. Yes, they've got Elanga, great signing, everyone's happy with that. But what I will say in all of this is, it shows Newcastle's ambitions. It shows that ambition. Newcastle didn't want to bring in EKITIKE to sell Issac. I said that all along. It was to play the two of them together so that EKITIKE could learn off Issac and kind of be his, not so much his understudy, but play alongside him, maybe off to the left, and then if and when Issac moved on, say for example it was next summer, EKITIKE then becomes the man. So yeah, a really convoluted story, probably one of the biggest ones I've ever covered, given the money that's involved and the size of the names. I mean, Alexander Isak's probably the most sought after striker in Europe at the moment, probably even more so than Erling Haaland, you would suggest. Erling Haaland's probably reached where he needs to be, and it's just incredible. It's actually incredible that it's got to this stage. That, you know, look, I think Newcastle looked and thought, wow, imagine we managed to get both of them here, and they're probably just kicking themselves that someone like Liverpool, they're kicking themselves that there's so few strikers available of that ilk, of that ability at the moment, and they'll just be thinking, how do we compete with Liverpool now and the resources they've got available? So there we have it, two strikers. Newcastle want both of them, Liverpool want one of them. They both would prefer Issac. Newcastle hold the cards with Issac. Newcastle will keep Issac. Liverpool will now try and get EKITIKE. I'd be surprised if Liverpool don't get him. Newcastle will keep knocking at the door. They will keep trying, but it feels very much like EKITIKE is more likely to join Liverpool at this present time. So there we have it. Wow, a bit of a busy few hours for me as I stand at an absolutely rain-soaked St James's Park, as I say, reflective of what's going on today. But it feels like it's all come to a head, and then hopefully we can move on from that. But you know, look, let's say for Newcastle, well done making that offer this morning. Huge amount of money. It would have eclipsed the £63 million the club paid for Issac, incidentally, 3 years ago. But turned down by Frankfurt. But £70 million shows what Newcastle want to do. I said it yesterday, I think when it comes to Eddie Howe, he would rather have two players in the shape of Elanga and EKITIKE who improve the starting 11 than maybe 4 or 5 players of guys who come in and he needs to like bed into the team, or it might take 6 months. He wants players who can come in and strengthen that starting 11, and EKITIKE would have been one of those. Elanga does that as well. So I say fair play to Newcastle for making that attempt. It shows the money's there, and it would have pretty much bust the budget. The 70 plus 55 is the 125. What would they have then done? Would they have brought in a goalkeeper? Probably not. That would have probably been shelved if they'd managed to get EKITIKE. If you managed to get EKITIKE, it's still alive. I think that would have been shelved, and Nick Pope would be the number one. And I think if you were to bring in a central defender, it would either have to be a loan with an option or bring forward some money from the January transfer window and spend it now. So there was an opportunity there. It's going to be difficult to compete with Liverpool, but Newcastle aren't dead yet. They're still attempting to get him, and they will keep trying. So let's see what it brings. But an extraordinary chain of events this afternoon that's led to two of Europe's top strikers being mentioned with Newcastle United, which, let's be honest guys, is a lot better than what was stood here 4 years ago talking about Hamza Chowdhury coming on loan. So there we are. Alright guys, leave your comments below if you can be bothered talking about it. See you on the next one.